Sat Shri Akal, I'm Attar.
Hi, I'm Maneesha.
And welcome to our podcast, Two Best Friends, where two best friends, meaning us, sit together, talk about anything and everything that relates to millennial, brown, migrant, parent, career-driven woman, and any issues that concern us or just questions that are within us and we haven't spoken about, or the fun topics.
For today, it's a question or a thought that we had, and it was about our mothers and about things that maybe our mothers never got to say to us or things that we never got to ask, right? Of course, there's generational differences, cultural differences because we're in different places. And I feel like recognizing, because we are parents as well, these are things that I had never heard or never spoke about. Now, as kids are growing, these are conversations that are coming up and thinking about that deeply. And I think that's why we're here. And I think it's not trying, in some ways, we're not trying to fix things or, that whatever happened then happened. But we're also trying to feel it and see what the difference is and talk about it further on. Because I feel like it's something important. But before we set into it, let's talk about our silver lining. And Attar, go for it.
I have actually a silver lining today. Tea. I love for it. I have been using it. I have to say I am the late user. I didn't start using it until I feel like maybe a month or a month and a half ago.
Oh my God.
I know. Everyone talks about it. I know you became psychologist thanks to ChatGPT.
I didn't. I find that very offensive, just on record here, because she has let go of my 7.5 years of study and given 6 last months I had.
Yeah,
to that.
Sure.
Anyway,
So,
get back into it.
Everyone talks about it. Everyone hypes about it. I did not use it, and eventually my lazy millennial self gave into it, and I downloaded and started using. The reason why I downloaded was that trend, where everyone becomes cartoon. Don't ask me the name of it. I'm pretty sure even you don't know the
I
name
don't know
of
what it is.
Is it the Gullibilly?
Yeah, something.
Yeah. So because of that, I downloaded it. Now, instead of Google, I just put into it and ask the question, and it gives me such detailed explanation.
Yeah, that's what I did.
I know, right? Amazing. However, yesterday, like from last 5 weeks, I've been asking it not stupid, just like any little thing, anything and everything. I put it in there, I get a response. So yesterday I was trying to understand some fitness body stats, and I put in like, what does actually this mean? What is the good indication of good health? And I was just trying to understand the fitness scan that I had done. So when I was doing it, and ChatGPT said, based on the data we've accumulated, this is how much you weigh. This is what your dietary preference is. This is what my age, and everything. It put it down. And I'm like, oh my God, it records all the data that you input. It was scary, but do I mind? No,
I get it.
I don't care.
It is
Who has the access to my details and information, except the bank details? Other than that, I don't care. I don't care if you know how much I weigh. I don't care if you know I'm vegetarian. I don't care anything. The best thing, other thing was that I could even make the itinerary from it. And it gives you the option, do you want it in PDF form?
Oh my God.
Yes.
I have
Oh,
made
yes.
so many
Yes.
itineraries. I agree.
Love it.
It has really changed. The other day, I saw someone put it on somewhere in social media saying, well, I put in my financial, my budget, how much I earn, and ChatGPT made a budget, did a financial plan, did everything for me. And it's like, my God.
You know what was the other thing I did? On Instagram, I saw that how best to utilize ChatGPT, and it gave the set number of questions. You ask those questions, and it is just like your internal about you, your personality, and how much trauma you had. And I was putting it in there, and I was getting the responses, and I was being asked such relevant questions. I'm like, why do people pay psychologists? This is amazing.
I am sure people
It's
think
my confidant now.
It is. I guess it doesn't give you the validation at some point.
It does.
Yeah,
It will. It will if I ask it.
Absolutely.
It will.
But it's red. right? How much of it is real and authentic?
Oh, maybe not.
It sounds very much, no, but I've got to say, because there's another example recently. I was actually thinking about it where I'm finding a lot of emails
Yeah.
and a lot of other things coming to me which are really well done, messages sometimes. And I'm like, this doesn't,
Do you know,
it
that
is
I have issue with.
ChatGPT, but
That
because
I have issue with.
also like personal stuff, and I'm like, now, where are we treading the line here with what is authentic and real and what's not? Saying that, my own guilty thing is sometimes if it's some stuff that I need to be like, I need this to be said across. I don't have the time and the space to go through it. This is what I want.
Yeah.
Gives me a beautifully written stuff, and I send it through.
Yeah.
So I do use it sometimes, but I know it's like, but it's one of those dark holes that I feel like you keep going, but then also you kind of question it and say, nah.
मतलब कुछ भी उसमें डाल दो, you get any like answer, everything. It's like a condensed version of Google.
And it's also well written.
Yes.
In a very personable way. Which
Yeah.
is what makes a difference.
So that's my silver line. ChatGPT.
ChatGPT came late, but came soon. Oh my god, that's maybe the only technology thing that you've come after me in life.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's the other way.
Yeah, because I wasn't studying. That's why.
That's
I didn't need references.
Well, you can't get references from there because I actually did once try to get references, and they were all like bogus references, and I realized this is not going to be useful. I need to still do the study. Anyways, coming back to my silver lining, mine's more about. So recently, I went out, and generally, we go out and sit and stuff, but we went. It was someone's birthday. It's a friend that maybe made in my 30s, and we talk about we don't make friends in our 30s, and that's good. That's true. And we were talking about, but these are women in their 40s and 30s and late 30s, 40s, and similar communities. So we met because we dressed up.
I have to check.
It is on, okay?
Yeah.
That just
it came in my mind, and I was like, I just have. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. But that's what happens when you're best friends forever and you've known each other since you were a child. Anyways, coming back to it. So making friends in adulthood. And these, because it's very hard. I feel like in your 30s or maybe, it's very hard to connect with new people. We did. We dressed up and, didn't go anywhere but the home, just chat. And then we realized like we were sitting there till 2 a.m. and we actually slept there. And it was really good to have that. And that made me recognize the importance of gatherings.
Yeah.
Importance of having spaces where you can just talk unfiltered. You can be curious. You're not like that judgment's not there. And you can be vulnerable. Because I think even though we talk about it, it's not easy to be vulnerable. And only few spaces have that.
Yeah.
And at least for me, it has been in smaller spaces or people I've known for life. And generally, someone who's open to it. So that was a good hit. Saying that, I'm also conscious, like generally when you say that to friends, the other side is like, Salo, main kaati.
Nahi, tu.
I think I would have thought that, but I'm like, kya?
Nahi, you lost me as I said. We were there until 2 a.m. You lost me there. But that was a sticking point. Yeah, तुम 2 बजे तक.
Yeah, but we did, and it was amazing. But it was good. The more important part of it is it was a really good feeling just to chat and talk about things and have that experience.
Sounds lovely, Mole.
Yeah, sounds fake, Attar, the way you're saying it. I get the internal struggles there.
It does sound lovely, but I'm still stuck on 2 a.m. Anyway, moving on.
Some people function better in the daytime. Some people may function better in the evenings.
I was driving through Yarra Valley today, and I saw the sun rise through the big eucalyptus trees, and it was just like big gum trees. It was just so beautiful.
I know. And when you love it, and for me, when you said to me, like when you I'm here at this place at 9 a.m., I'm like, dude, I couldn't even get out of my bed at 9 a.m. But I think that's just we were actually talking about how it's really important for us to do the same thing, and we're like, okay, night not possible. No. Let's do afternoons, 4 p.m. or do mornings, normal mornings.
And the thing is, I know we're going on a tangent here. I'm so sorry, our producer. I'm so very sorry, but I have to just say that it's not that I can't do late night. It just throws my routine off. And it's just
I feel you have to come. Like the important time, night is not important. It's the feeling of coming together and having that space. And I think that is where, like, I feel like, this age group, or like, we don't have to be dictated by that, right? Oh my god, you're gonna have the vibe in the space in at later in the night. You can have it at any time you want to have it, and I think that's fine.
Let's create the vibe now for a podcast.
All right, coming back into it, this is a really as we said, so it is about, and this is I think one of the reasons is about talking about, there are things that I feel like maybe we didn't hear from our mothers, and I think I feel like there was not so much. I have more conversations with my mother today than I would have had in the past. Even now, it's really hard to have them. But I feel like one of the things I think my mother, and I'm just going to start with that, is my mom was also kind of a migrant because she was in the north, right? And because of that, I felt like she had this pressure to be strong or present to the world like, that I can do this or because, and I think that was really like that in itself meant there was almost a facade, or there's all these things that she had to do or present as to get it up, but there was all that pressure to almost kind of not be perfect but be perfect in her own way.
I think before we got into this topic, we were discussing how our race, both of our, like the race starts from different points. And by that, I mean that our upbringing, our background, our mothers of what they were doing when they had us or when they were raising us was very different. Like, as you said, your mom was a migrant within India, going from South India to North India. If any non Indians are listening to this, just to point it out, it is like migrating to another country because the language is different.
Yeah, everything.
Food
The
is
culture
different.
is different.
The culture is completely different. But for my mum, the difference was that she was married. She came from a big family, married into a big family, big joint family, where her husband had 10 siblings at the time, then lost one, 9 siblings, their families, their kids. So your mum was a principal in school when she had. My mum, her daily routine looked like that today is a day that I'm going to take load of washing, go to the close by stream of water to wash it, and then come back, walk back 1 or 2 kilometers, go and fill the water from the nearby well, and bring it back. So it's so different what we're going to talk about today and what their experiences are different. However, the balance and the perfection was there as well. Like, I think my mom, my auntie, my grandmother, because I've seen them all together in one household, everybody did everything together. And the pressure on them was exactly the same of having the household perfect. I remember my mom said that for them, the parameter of how well your house is maintained is your kitchen. Clean your shelves are where the buttons are stored. So the pressure was there that if somebody is coming, they would see that, oh, you've got animals like cows. We would have domestic cows. That is their cow dung being taken care of. Do you smell? Do you reek of that dung? Does your house reek of that? So that pressure was always there that you have to do all those things. You have to take care of the cow dung, put it in make a cake so you can light a fire for the dinner, but you or your house cannot reek of that. Yeah. So and
not talking about that pressure.
My God, like, no way.
I feel like my mom in a different way, but her, like, we lived in a place which was not by any standards a very normal house, in the sense of, like, I'm talking about physically normal house, because we were literally in these 3 different cabins and a little bit of tree and stuff. But anyways, the pressure my mother had to get a house all her life. Yeah. And that was our biggest conflict in my household, I remember, is because she was embarrassed by having that house. And because her family was in the south and they never came. They only came once in 10 years, I remember. Maybe one person came. But the pressure to have that was so huge that I think she kept chasing wanting a house her whole life. And it's very interesting because I hear that and about, because my father had a very different outlook about things. But the other part of it is that I really want to talk about, because we also have cultural silences about things. And I think my biggest thing that I think my mom never said but I could see she struggled with, her own mental health. And just I could remember, like, and she still does, and where there are days or there are months where she just goes down, right? And I was actually recently reflecting about menopause and perimenopause and stuff. My mom had me at 37. By the time she was going
She
through
must be getting
menopause
soon.
was when I was 10. I was thinking about, and I was now thinking and reflecting, oh my God, like, what was that? Like, in my head, what are my memories of that time? And she struggled, now that I think about it, right?
Yeah.
But we never spoke. No one's like, there was no acknowledgement, no community.
Yeah.
Like, I know we talk about India and community, but I feel like no one spoke to their, like, I feel like we have that.
Yeah.
Where we talk to our friends or you talk to your sisters. She had 5 sisters, but at that time, everyone was busy bringing up their own kids. No one spoke to each other. I thought my mother was really lonely. Now that I think about it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In that space,
Yeah.
like, who are these people, friends? I can't say the whereas we have that. We're able to share our vulnerable side a bit more compared to that time.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And your mum being the migrant, my mum, even though she lived in the family, she had that community and she was, and still is very good friends with my aunties. And like they had each other, but it's still that space of like, even being away from the family, like your mum was away from her family, like Kerala to Chandigarh. My mum was away from her family, like UP to Haryana. That's so far away. And in that space, sometimes you need your parents, you need your own, your
but
own
also
blood
the
community.
thing about women being in their own spaces and not reaching out to their family.
No.
And that was very strong in those times,
Yeah.
right? And I feel that was the quietness. Like, they didn't have that.
No.
And they never spoke about it. If there was something happening in your family, even with your partner, you didn't talk about it because it was in your family. And at some point, your success was equal to you just surviving through that.
Oh, and surviving through it with minimal noise, silence. You
So
need
not
the silence.
saying, oh fuck, I'm struggling, or this is happening in my relationship. Whereas I think not as much. I'm not gonna say we are very much like we get, but I feel like we do say, hey, enough is enough. I'm not gonna deal with
At
this.
least we are aware of it.
And
Like,
sometimes, also like being able to say, I don't want to be in this relationship. Or women in our generation were saying, no, actually, this is not working out for whatever reason. Let's separate or let's divorce. That was not an option, I feel like, at that time, or it was not spoken about as much.
Yeah, I can just think back of the time when my mom, before I was born, the sister just older than me, she missed her immunization and she got polio. And I cannot even imagine the time that my mom would have gone through and how hard it must have been. How much of a self failure she would have felt because the society made her feel that. Someone said the guilt of missing not that it was just her responsibility, it was like a joint responsibility. Even if it happened, I think the awareness was not there at that time. But having a child with disability and navigating through it in the community where anyone who has child with disability or anyone with disability is demonized, living through with it and then finding avenues of like what next, that must have been so isolating. And then along with that, taking care of two other older children and then taking care of the joint family or the other household and the members, I can't even imagine. Like, it must have been so hard, and she would have needed all the support and the mental health support. That's when now we can talk about therapeutic support. But at that time, all you're doing is deflecting the blames and just trying to survive. Survival is tiring.
And also, it's almost like, at least I think at some point, it was almost like don't talk, just go.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like, in that, just why do you want to talk about these bad things?
Yeah, it's happened. But then,
Yeah.
like, accept it. Sometimes, yeah, you need to accept it.
But it takes time.
It takes time. There is a way through the shit before you get to the point of like, you know what? Yes, I've tried. This is what it is. I accept it. But I don't think our parents, our mothers were allowed to feel that emotion.
And it was quite privatized.
Very much so.
Yeah. And I think, and not my mother, but I can think of some very close family members where, there've been things, it's a society where men had different roles and they got out and did things and women didn't. And there was a lot of pain there,
Yeah.
right? Because you were not going out with them or doing things. And that was quite privatized in its own way. Like, you don't share it with other people. It is your family. You work it out. And that's it. And I think that was one part of it. But the other thing that I feel that is being quiet, that I have not been spoken to about is, even like I was reflecting from this conversation I recently had about periods. Like, I got my periods. I don't remember a conversation before that. And this is from, I feel like I knew about it when I had it, but there was no conversation about it. There was no conversation about any body part of mine, such as my vagina or anything, or what does that mean? And I feel like I struggle with that whole concept, even in like try to understand it, because I think this is something, it is such a, like, in the Western world, I feel like it's very, oh, maybe the more and more people like, oh, it's sexuality and all that. But I'm like, in our culture, I'm like, there is no conversation.
Is it happening now? Because I was exactly the same. No conversation, nothing whatsoever.
I think it's just like most of the friends are women I know, if their daughters or fathers for that matter, if they have daughters or even sons, to be honest, they do talk about periods. Like, there is a conversation, like, this is something that's gonna happen, and it's more freer. Like, I feel like when I was growing up, I didn't know period existed till it happened or what it looked like. Whereas I feel like nowadays it's a bit more, it's there, out there, and you talk about it, or it's like
a lot more knowledge is out there.
Yeah, and it is spoken about, right? And I feel like kids learn early on. You could call it you're exposing them too early, but I'm like,
I think
inherent part of your life that we've just thrown on the side. Whereas I think it is
there's no such thing as too much information or too early of it.
Yeah.
Of something that
It also depends on your kid, right?
Yeah,
like, so you know where your kid is at. Because, like, I think that is another thing that was never spoken about.
Yeah.
About diet.
Just about this, I was listening to one of the podcasts, and this host said that the indication of me knowing I've raised a good son is when he can go and buy tampon for his girlfriend or wife without trying to hide or without feeling any shame. And I think that's such a good point, especially for the, and she was not even from brown community, white as born, brought up in Australia. So I feel like that's a good indicator even for us to know that how open we've raised our children to be, because
not any shame around it.
More open they are, less intimidated they, or less bigger deal of it is. It's normalized. The more you talk about it, more normalized it is.
And it's like, and the second part is, and I know, I mean, it's sex, right? Or sexuality. Like, I feel like it's almost like it's accepted that it'll happen in your life. At some point, at least in Indian culture, South Asian culture, it's always related to marriage and kids. But my mind just recently blew when I had another few women from different cultures, Western culture, where their perception of sexuality, sex pleasure was so different. And they were talking about how they have young girls, and they're like, we're talking early, and we're not talking about sex, is for procreation.
Yeah. And
that just blew my mind, because I'm like, oh my God, because the first thing kids ask is, how are kids made?
Yeah.
And you're like, and you just related to sex, and you're like, actually, that's not even true anymore. Like, it's like, my God, like, I was like, that is not a perception or a thought I have ever had because of my conditioning and my culture. Because it's almost like I've had so many stories of people telling me, and even for me, I've never had a conversation about what that means growing up. Of course, I had, I met people and I grew, but nothing. There was no.
It's as if that's reserved for
to explore by yourself, which is maybe can be a very scary thing, because you also talk to peers who have no idea.
Yeah.
And it'll also, you go into a lot of, I think, situations which are very unsafe. Or, you now I reflect, I'm like, oh, I did some fucked up shit there. But now I'm like, maybe
that's why more awareness now that they're doing it schools. I think that's fantastic. That's some knowledge that they need to have from all areas of their lives. As brown parents, we still feel a little bit stigmatized, a little not really shamed, but don't know how to approach the.
I don't think I know how to do it, and
it's hard.
I was actually with this. There was another brown parent, and she was like, "I have a daughter. I don't know how to do this." And we actually, and I was like, how do you do it?
Yeah, how do you do
And
it?
she was like, and the other, her kids, she was like, actually, that is pretty okay to say, I don't know how to do it. Because as a parent, you don't.
You don't.
I don't know. My parent didn't have a chat with me about sexuality and sex and pleasure, what that means. But she's like, that's what books are there for.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Right? She's like, if nothing else, book is a brilliant, there's so many books out there. Bring it in between you and your kid, read it, and then go from there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I never thought of that. Because in my head, I'm like, I have no idea as a parent, because I have my own conditioning, my own, I don't know how to go around that topic. Still, in my head, I'm like, oh, my kid has to be some 15, 16 before I get that.
Oh
But I'm
my
like,
God,
no,
no, I
they
was
don't.
told that that's too late.
Yes, it is too late, but I feel like that is our conditioning,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
It's no, it's you've got to go early. It's I'm like, oh my God, am I going to speak to my 10-year-old? Yes, you do.
Yes, you have to. And imagine our mothers were left on their own devices and be like, ha, shadi hogi, they'll find it.
And that's what they did.
But I feel bad for the males, like men. Like, if they've not had that conversation, how are they going to even?
Same. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's why you as parents or like what would like I feel like, my younger self would have really appreciated some heads up, if nothing else, about just about like, it is a normal part of your body.
Yeah.
Because I feel like my relationship is a bit, I'm still understanding it, right? And I think that's a lot of people.
Yeah. So it's like we feel this way, our mothers would have felt 100 times worse, conflicted, not sure what is going to happen.
I don't know if they really thought about it so deeply.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe they were so consumed with other things that they didn't. And that's probably their point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is, I think, just there's no right or wrong, and I get it from a cultural point of view, but I think that is what we're able to now do for kids or talk to them about. I'm not saying there's no shame or guilt or confusion around it as a parent. I 100% feel that. Yeah. Right? But I think I'm willing to try because I think as a younger self, I would have appreciated that. And my relationship with all of this, in some ways, could have been better. Yeah. Right? And that's it. Yeah, of course. Now we realize that that's why we're wanting to change things our mothers couldn't do. Yeah. And my
change that narrative.
Saying that, I've got to say everything else. When I have periods, for example, right? Even though I was never told about periods in my household, of course, I was a single child as well. The moment I had my periods, my dad got my pads. I had water bottle there, so it was a very well known. Like it was not a stigma, which I know a lot of my fellow other women have had. Like you don't talk about it. It's a very like. I did not have that, but it's more like the heads up or the talk about it. But then that was it. Like I
want to also talk about like this is what I have explored that how my mother was that or women I have seen. I want to also talk about working women in mothers at a mother's time and also managing the household. I think you're the better person to talk about it because you've seen it yourself. Did your mum work after she had you?
I mean, both of my parents didn't work.
I know they were both like such.
They did, but they didn't work when I was like I can't remember them work. They of course did a lot of things, and like they used to do workshop, but they didn't have that typical structure of work. It was very random as such.
I would love to hear from our listeners as their parents or their mothers who worked and also managed their household because I want to know the experience that mothers had at that time. Like if we are struggling as women, today's women who can voice things that they don't like to some degree, how would it be?
I have family that most women, my mom's side, everyone works. I think it's a double whammy there. It's just
like now.
It's not, but I feel like I can still ask and say, hey, and I have a say in my household about my finances and how it works, right?
Back in the days.
I feel like they were just another tool of earning money.
But no,
that was it. Like I feel like some people like it was very like it just is very family to family. But I can think of a lot of women who have no say. They're still earning and doing all that going on, but they're still also cooking and they're responsible for, but also have not much control and power over that. So I mean that is my experience of it.
I remember anytime any professional women would come to a gaon, it was admired. Like from female's point of view, like it was absolutely admired that look at her, how amazing. I'm sure that person, that woman had struggles of their own, as we just said. Like, yeah, they were another hand to earn the money, not necessarily meaning they had the financial independence. But yeah, we in our eyes, it was worshipped. Even though I feel like my great grandmother, I've seen her. I was about 7 or 8 when she passed away, and I did see her hustle. I'd see her go out and about, and she was that little fiery woman.
It's a personality type as well. Like, I'm not saying everyone's the same.
Because men in the society are not necessarily welcome. Like they don't welcome working women now. And I'm not talking about in Australia. There are a lot more hardships in India. Back in the days, it would have been like 100 times worse. Name calling 100 times worse.
It is different though in my experience of, and that's why I feel like my experience of North and South is quite different, because
the South is better.
the generation before, like my mom's generation in South, all women started working, right? Whereas in my dad's side, no women were working except for my mother in that generation. Whereas the next generation, it's changed. But did that change? Yes, maybe. But yes, like I feel like in certain circumstances, there was different things in the. But I'm not saying patriarchy was still there, right? But absolutely, there was that difference. Like I feel like the stigma and all, or that thing was not there in the South as much that I felt in the North. Like it was almost like a thing. Like you would be a working woman in the South. Like it's not spoken. Like there is no question about that not being a thing.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Whereas,
that was just given.
Like now.
Yeah.
Whereas that was not a given in the North.
I feel like North still is a bit of a.
Depends.
Yeah, it's not like a second nature that you just are expected to work.
Yeah.
You going to college, you earning a degree doesn't necessarily mean that you will be working.
I mean, depends on where it is, but yeah, I know what you're saying. We have, gone through another space, but I think coming back to, yes, and there are a lot of things, and I feel like even in, like, at least for me, I feel like, there was love, but there was even in that silence or not being able to say things, but now we're learning how to say it, almost like, right? Because I remember the other thing my mom used to say when I was a kid, and it was coming back to me was, why do you always say no? Learn how to say yes. Right? And now, but I've got to say, I'm like, she should have actually told me how to just continue to say no.
Yeah.
Right? Well, I'm learning how to say no now.
Oh my god, we said no, but there's back.
It's
We're like,
also it's hard to say no because I feel like you're taught to say yes.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Like if you say no back in your head, then you have that guilt of saying.
Yeah. So I'm like, that is what it's almost a training to just you don't say it. Whereas I think for my kids, I'm like, of course, be respectful, but say no if you want to say no.
Yeah.
And that is what stuck with me. That I feel like just something I want to say to them. You gotta listen to yourself rather than just saying yes because they are older to you or whatever that means, right? Anyways, coming back, should we? I think that's quite a lot of things. Leave our listeners with what didn't your mother get to say and what will you say now? If that is something to reflect on.
Or something that you want to change with your kids that you felt that your mother couldn't change.
Yeah, what's something your mother said that she felt or it's there, but like we said, maybe they wanted to and they didn't. DM us or put it on the messages, tell us, and thank you for listening to us for this week.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week. See ya.